Hello everyone, my name is Belva King and today is September the 10th, 2010, and we're at the Antique Import on East Street, and I am so thrilled and happy to do this project on East Street and East Church Street. With me I have her Sandy, who's the owner of Import Antiques, and Mr. Burke here, and I am so tickled. I know I'm going to have a good time reminiscing, and I just thank God that they allow me to do this. I believe Frederick is growing so fast, and this needs to be done. I'm a 65-year-old lady, and I lived in Frederick all my life. Sandy, would you like to have something to say?
Sure. And this is the Antique Imports, and I took over this business about a year ago, and it's called the Loft of the Antique Imports now. And I think Bert can weigh in on this. It's 30 or 40 years that Antique Imports was here, so it's very exciting to get this bit of history and share this with you.
Well, thank you, Sandra. And Mr. Burke?
Yeah, I'm Bert Anderson, and I've been here since 1973. I've seen Shab Row come along from when it was just a kind of a rundown area, and I think it's wonderful that Belva has taken this project to preserve some of the memories and the history of Shab Row. She'll be talking with many of the merchants who occupy what were homes at one time at Shab Row, so you'll have the opportunity to see the inside of these homes as they are now. So I think it's a wonderful project, Belva, and I'm glad you've undertaken it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Burke. And I also like to tell everyone that this is the second part of the video. We did a video with the members, the people that lived on Shab Row, of Mrs. Nomi Neller's 88th birthday. I hope you enjoy it as much as I'm putting this together. Thank you.
Belva King lived in one of Frederick's black neighborhoods from 1950 until she married in 1965. The neighborhood was located in the area of East and Church Streets and is currently known as Shab Row. We will certainly talk more about Shab Row. She recalls the area being called Over the Tracks in Chinatown by blacks that lived in other areas of Frederick. It was just referred to as home by the residents. Oh, by the way, Belva lived at 315 East Church Street. Although the schools were integrated in 1959, Belva, due to the school board's transition plan, did not go to Frederick High School until 1962, her senior year, and she graduated in 1963. It was a close community, and they looked out for each other. Whoever the adult neighbor present was, they would keep an eye on the kids and were even stricter than their parents. And if they were also a parent and a child upset them, that child was in deep trouble when he or she got home. Belva remembers that like most communities, there were some very interesting people living around her, and she will share many of those memories.
Hi, I'm Belva King. I'm here with you at my old house. This is my house that I used to live at, and this was 313 East Church Street. I came to Frederick when I was like 5 years old. A lot of things happened here. I love this house. In this house, my mother, Edna Diggs, my father, Leonard Diggs, lived here for a long time. My mother worked at the sewing factory for years. And my father, he worked at Fort Detrick as a trash man. We all lived here. And I'm so glad that Mr. Burke Anderson saved these old historic houses, because it means a lot. My mom and dad was able to buy a new home at Emma Miller's, and they've been out there nearly 30 years. My dad is dead now, but back then houses was very hard to find, and this was the best place for us to live at the time. Across the street there was Ever Ready. It made a lot of noise, especially during the summertime. They would open the windows up, and they made a lot of pots and pans. I didn't particularly like living here because of the noise.
A Lutheran cemetery was located on Mill Road, now East Church Street, just east of East Street. At one time the largest cemetery in Frederick, it was dismantled in July of 1906, following a long period of disuse. The Bowers Lumber Company and Ever-Ready Company have occupied the site since the bodies were exhumed. The Frederick News Post, December 21, 1906. We are now looking at the beginning of Ever-Ready. The Ever-Ready Company was started in 1920 by two brothers, Harry J. and Robert W. Liebhertz. And in 1922, another brother, William B. Liebhertz, joined the business. The first product manufactured was a simple, practical device for sealing bottles for home brew. Over the next 30 years, the company greatly increased in size and the product line. The repeal of prohibition severely restricted the market for the bottle cappers, and at that time, the company began making chrome-plated skillets and other items of cookware. This expanded line required additional space, and buildings were added over the years. A new line of trays, vases, lamps, cocktail sets, and other gift items were also introduced during this period. During the war years, the company turned to war production and was awarded the Army-Navy E Award. Following World War II, new items were introduced, including the tater baker, a corn popper, electric broiler, and Lazy Susans. In 1958, the company was sold by the Liebhertz brothers to Standard International, and the company, under the marketing and promotion leadership of Charles J. McCarthy, promoted the 10-inch skillet with a sales increase of over 27% noted. New items were added, and in 1963, a new line known as Cameo Cookware was added. In 1967, Ever-Ready adopted the name of Everclad as the official and registered name for the chrome-plated Teflon-coated line. In 1969, a porcelain-covered steel line was brought out known as the Anniversary Cookware line.
By me living here, I believe it made me a stronger person. I found I want more out of life. It also made me patient. I'm a 65-year-old lady. I was married 40 years to Ernest King. I was a foster mom, and we had gotten an award for outstanding job of being the foster parents. I have two adopted daughters, one named Carrie and one named Kendra, and 4 grandchildren. I'm a member of St. James AME Church. My pastor is Reverend Langston. I worked all my life. I have worked for National Geographic for 20 years. I love history to tell stories that I remember. My mom, again, she worked for 30 years for the sewing factory, and then later on she worked 20 more years at Fort Detrick. She was nearly 80 years old when she retired. My dad, Mr. Leonard Diggs, he was a World War II veteran, and he worked for the trash company out to Fort Detrick. He also was the manager of the Little League. I have sisters. Their names is Debbie, Leona, brothers, Leonard Jr. and Matt Diggs. We all lived in the same house. In fact, Matt was raised in this house. In 2008, I won a state award for being a historian. I won another award in 2009 for being a historian, and I got this award from the Human Relations of Frederick County. Attached house here was Mr. George Robinson, and he died at the age of 47. He was at Newton Baker, went to New Baker in Martinsburg, and he was the husband of Frances Orme Robinson and the son of late George William and Niecy Fry of Frederick. He also was in World War II. He was a labor technician at Fort Detrick. He was a member of Mount City Lodge. He had 9 children that all lived in this house. They had 3 daughters, Carolyn, Alicia, and Brenda. 6 sons, Kenny, Timmy, Michael, Charles, Richard, and Robert. As I said, Mr. Robinson was only 47 years old, and he died of cancer. Also in this house right here at 313, this is the home of Clark Orms. He was the first black to run for county commissioner. Clark Orms was the first to run on the 1970 primary, which was won by Ronald Young. Right here, it was 319, and Mr. John Hughes in 1950, Mr. John Hughes and Carrie Lee. Mr. John Hughes was a person that loved to party, and he always had something going on, and he was known for being in and out of jail. And I remember the nights that he would be in the backyard playing his guitar. He loved to play the guitar and have a good time. Him and Mrs. Carrie Lee that lived next door to him. It was a house right here named Miss Carrie Lee, and him and John Hughes were good friends, and a lot of times they had gotten into trouble. Mrs. Carrie Lee lived at 321, right next to Mr. John Hughes. Mr. John Hughes was a beautiful singer, and he loved to play his guitar, and he would be in the backyard playing his guitar. I remember that. After Mr. John Hughes moved out, it was a wooden house, I remember, and after him, it was a business that was in that house, and it would open up to 8 to 4 every day, and on Saturday it was 8 to 12. And they would have, it was a door clean rug and furniture clean, and they had a lot of chemicals in this house, and I remember them having a picture of a skeleton on the door, and it says, "Do not enter," but it was a business. And these people would come and clean your carpets and your furniture. Along here, it was a house, another house, and this was Miss Jessie Johnson's house. She was a very active lady. She belonged to Quinn Church. She was the first black to start a new job as a result of human relation in 1977 council. Charge was made not harm enough minority person. This lady was into everything, and she spoke out. She had like about 2 girls and three boys. She was a very nice lady, Mrs. And like I say, she was the first. She opened the doors for us blacks to work at the post office, and she was very glad that she did this. And also in the same house, the house has stood back some. It was also in that same house lived the Snowdens and the Fishers. And then we'll come down here. A lot of these houses are torn down, and we have other houses. And I remember in 1958, it was a gentleman named John Boynes. He was a laborer, and I remember I was up on my porch, and I could see Mr. John Boyne coming out with fire all over him. And I couldn't get down here to help him, but he had died. It burned, and it burned all over his body. And I remember that day, and it was nothing I could do to help him. He was like a 60-year-old man. Next to it was a thatch house here. It was an old lady, Her name was Harriet Ann Smith. She was about 80 years old, and she was a well-known, respectable colored woman. And she lived here on East Church Street. She worked for many prominent families. She was a member of the All Saint Protestant Episcopal Church. They had to fly her back to Baltimore, but she belonged to this church, and she was about 80 years old.
Some of the ladies from the Eastern Church Street community that worked at Lincoln Tailoring were Edna Diggs, Frances Robinson, Etta Bowie, Elizabeth Brown, Naomi Naylor, Mildred Allen, and Hilda Williams. And that within itself was not anything unique. However, the thing that makes this particular configuration very interesting was the fact that the black facility was located on West All Saints Street, and they made the pants for suits, but they didn't make the jackets. The jackets were made at a white facility in Uptown Frederick.
We're here at the filling station here, and before I talk about the filling station, I would like to tell you about before the filling station was here, it was like 6 rows of houses here. About 1950, my mother told me not to come this way to go up East Street. There were 6 rows of houses here. And I didn't listen to her. I came up this way. The row of houses here were known as bad houses. And I came up this way, and I remember seeing a faucet, a water faucet where everybody drank out of. I remember seeing one toilet that everybody used and people hanging out the window. And when I was trying to go to come through this way to go up East Street, this little boy named Junebug said, if you go that way, I'm going to throw stones at you. And sure enough, he did. And I learned not to come this way. It was more a bad place to live. And like I said, I remember different things about this place. And the mothers had tried to keep us out of this area. And then later on, in 1953, Mr. Leroy L. Denty Moore had a filling station here. Mr. Moore was a very nice man. We would come here and get ice cream and candy. I remember Jimmy, my cousin, would come here, and he would practically live here because he liked Mr. Moore. We always played ball down there beside the filling station there. We have a good old time playing ball, jump ropes, doing marbles. We did everything. Mr. Moore allowed us to do that.
I'm Bill, the owner of the Frederick Coffee Company. I've owned this for 4 years. I'd love to compliment Belva for the effort that she's putting together here to record the history of this area. We have many customers who come in and request what was this before it was a coffee shop? And with the history that you've recorded, it has definitely added to the interest of the store and the merchants around here, and the changes that have happened. Through your eyes, I'd hope that it's a positive one.
Oh yes.
We've been very happy with the area, and what the other merchants have brought to it as well. And I'd really like to thank you for this effort. I think it's monumental and really wonderful for the community.
All right, well, thank you. I thank
The
you.
heritage of the area has been maintained, and yet we've taken a step forward into the future with being able to have stores like Talbot's and the ice cream store, food store, coffee shops. We also have a lot of students who come in who do a lot of work on their laptops and Wi-Fi. Like I said, it's just great that you can bring attention to this little part of town that has grown and has a lot of history. And like I said, that you've recorded, and we can keep on looking at it through the years, and it won't be lost.
Right. All right, thank you. I want to also say that this place is dynamite. I just love it. I come here to listen to jazz, and I love their sandwiches, their food. It just makes you feel at home. And guess what? You don't have to pay anything to come in. You know, you could just, not just to sit, but just to enjoy yourself. And I just think their food is terrific.
Belva did some interesting research when she was trying to find out about where the name Shab Row came from. And some of the interesting facts that she found are that as early as 1887, 120 North East Street was a residence. And that residence was there and occupied up until the 1970s. The area was called Shab Row. We thought it was only as early as 1912, but we found some additional information that John Russell and Ida Bruce, colored, were married yesterday morning at Shab Row. And that was on 4/12/1893. So we now know that Shab Row was something there in 1893. So that's an interesting item. It seems too obvious and simple to accept the urban legend that the name Shab Row comes from Shabby Row. With no supporting evidence, it may be speculated that Shab Row's name is derived from the island of Shab Row of the west coast of Angola, now Sierra Leone. There were slaves from that region living in the Frederick area. Some are reported to be buried in the Wayman AMC Church Cemetery off of Old Route 26 east of Mount Pleasant, an old African-American cemetery which dates back to the 1850s. This cemetery has a few broken and old headstones that are buried in the ground. It's believed that some slaves were able to retain a sense of tribal identity. Perhaps the Shab Row natives clustered together and referred to themselves and their community by the name of Shab Row. And this may well have been just kind of transitioned over to the name Shab Row. We don't know, but it's a speculation. One of the interesting items that refers to the area as Shab Row is about a year ago, the Northern Central Railroad tried to purchase some of the property on East Street in the section known as Shab Row. When it was found the railroad was after the property, it is claimed values were inflated to such an extent that the purchases of the property were abandoned. Now, don't that sound like things happening today? And that occurred actually, though, on 1/23/1912. Just another little snippet. Another interesting item has to do with final plans for census. One of the items here is East Church, North Side to East Side, Shab Row. So it looks like even in the census at some point they refer to some area there as Shab Row. That is very interesting. Some college girls here. Again in 1912, May of 1912, May 14 actually. Girls visit Odd Corner Sociology class of Women College, tell of life of Shab Row. Martha Palmer, colored, who was arrested at the assistance of a colored woman visiting on Shab Row from Philadelphia on the charge of being drunk and disorderly, was fined $3 and in default given 15 days in jail. Officer Fraley made the arrest, 8/13/1913. That was approximately 20 cents a day. Tough times. Easter sale. This is an article, an actual ad that appeared in the Frederick News Post on 4/2/1930. Easter sale, $1 off hamsters. Springbird special, 10% off, etc., etc. Rocks, Fish, and Pet Supplies, 122 East Street, Shab Row, Frederick, Maryland. Interesting. Shab Row is becoming very popular as a reference.
You're at Simply Chic. This is a boutique that specializes in designer dresses for formal wear occasions. And today we're part of the Frederick Fashion Show, which will be this evening, and we're working on our models to prepare to get ready to present our dresses.
Oh my, that's nice. That's nice.
And we also carry a line of casual wear, handbags, makeup, and accessories to match your dresses. It could be for any kind of formal occasion, even a cruise, a wedding, a homecoming, so even a holiday event. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, okay. I have to tell my granddaughter about this place. We thank you for letting us come here, and we just want to just look around. This is 112 East Street, and there's a lot of history here, and I want to kind of tell you about some of the history of 112. King, could you get a video out there too? Oh, it's so pretty out here. So nice. I never knew this place existed. Well, you know, this is the house that Miss Alice Palmer lived. And she worked for President Roosevelt. Do you remember President? She worked in the kitchen for the Roosevelt. And then this house, I think it was, the Palmers had like about 8 kids, and they all lived. Can you imagine all these kids living in here? But people lived in here, and there's a lot of history, and found out that that Miss Alice worked for Roosevelt, and found out that her brother also worked for the Roosevelts, and he was some kind of a guard. What do you call it? A security guard, you know, to protect the president. And they wanted, she asked, Mrs. Roosevelt asked, would you know anyone that could work in the kitchen? So that's how they got Miss Alice to work in the kitchen. Her name was Miss Alice. I got my notes here somewhere. Miss Alice Freeman. She was a Palmer then, but she married a Freeman. Also, she had a sister named Beatrice. She was a housemaid in Washington. She had a brother named Charles, John, and Robert. They all held government jobs in Washington, D.C. Etta lived here for years. I used to come here every day, and a lot of times Etta was so smart. She knew everything that was on TV. Would ask her questions, she knew the answer just like that. I mean, she was a really bright lady, and she was a housewife, and she also taught sewing in sewing school. And she also had a brother named Maynard. He was a World War II veteran medical corps. And it's a lot of history, and found out Miss Alice's father, Mr. Charles Palmer, in 1889, someone had left him on the steps, and he never knew who his mom and dad was. Can you imagine being a little baby? And it was a lady named Norris, Sophie Lord Norris. And she raised him, and she raised him, and he was a very hard worker. So this is just a little history to let you know that this is a historic house. Miss Alice lived here for years, and found out that most other kids, I don't know how they afforded it back then, but they all went to the Catholic school. So they were very, very, very smart people. So I hope y'all enjoy that little story. Yeah. So, you know, they were, back in the 50s, there weren't toilets inside. You know, we had to do the best we could. And a lot of our people stayed in these houses, and then later on bought new houses because it was no place for blacks to live. So I hope you enjoy it. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing.
Hi, we're here at 114 East Street, and Mrs. Margaret Lowes, she lived here for many, many years. She was 89 when she died. She was a member of the Madam C. Jacob Walker Temple, 509 of the Elks. We had that connection with Mr. Benny. They were very nice people. And now I see it's a beautiful bakery. I'm glad that we're able to come here. And can I ask, what is your name?
My name is Rosie.
Ah, you work here?
Yes.
Oh, I want to tell you a little history about this place. When we were kids, we would come here many times. It was like a convenience store, and we come buy sodas, potato chips, And the people that owned this place was named Mr. and Mrs. Bernard Stewart. And they were very nice. I remember years ago, I would take a load of pop olives and trade him. I know he was charging me pop olives, but I bought my pop olives then. It was worth 2 cents and 5 cents, and I would come here and give it to Mr. Benny. They were very nice people. I see that this is the bakery. You work here?
Yes, I work here not long ago, around 1 year. My best friend started a bakery in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of a little bit lower business a few years ago, but we started picking it up. Like you said before, it used to be a little bit different.
Right.
Different products, but now we just bake bread, some Danish and some desserts.
Oh.
And also we just make business with the other supermarkets.
Oh my! It smells good, and it looks so good. Everything looks so good. I have to come back here later on and pick myself up a cake.
Thank you. Anytime.
Yes, and I love the way you have it fixed and everything. It looks altogether different. Remember Mr. Benny's counter was this way, and he had groceries all over and everything. And we just love Mr. Benny and Miss Harry. Miss Harry would come to. Everything was in place. She was a lady that had a lot of jewelry, and she was dressed every day. She was just that type of lady. She was a very nice lady. And I want to thank you for allowing me to tell everyone about Mrs. and Mrs. Bernard Stewart. And we call him Benny for short, but his right name is Bernard.
I hear a little bit about them. Like you said, I just recently started working here, but history of this bakery, I haven't heard about them
Right.
for a long time ago. Yeah.
All right, well, I thank you.
Thank you too.
Take care. Yes, this is where Bernard Stewart, Benny, Mrs. and Mrs. Benny Stewart lived right here. And a lot of times I would come here on Saturdays and help Mrs. Stewart with her apartment. Like I said, they were very, very nice people. Hi, we're in the home of 117 East Street, and this was the house of Mr. and Mrs. Dan Williams for many, many, many years. They had one child named Edie. Edie had died of a rare disease, and it was very sad that she had passed. She'd been sick for many, many years. Mr. Dan was an outstanding person that both had worked very hard. I know this was their living room. The living room was very small. There was a kitchen back here, and I'm just glad to be here to share this with everybody. Everyone loved Edie, and she died so young. And at that time, they didn't know what was wrong with Edie, but she lived in this house, and their parents really loved her dearly. And over here, believe it or not, this was another house, and this house was over here was Mrs. Bookie Palmer. Mr. Bookie was the first gentleman. He worked at the Francis Scott Key Hotel, and he worked there when he first opened up, and he worked ever since. They also had several kids. This was their kitchen. This was their dining room area, right here. And that was their kitchen back there. And Mr. Bookie had a daughter that went to college to be a well-known cook. She worked at many government places. And her name was Miss Harriet Palmer. She worked at many government places, and she was a supervisor of most government places. And also from here was Judy, that now lives in Kentucky. She lived in this house. Most of his kids live out of town right now from Kentucky. And Miss Judy Brown also lived here.
This is the Little Pottery Shop, and we're at 117 North East Street.
I appreciate you coming here, and I love everything. Everything looks so beautiful. I love everything.
Oh, well, thank you. We have about 120 different artisans from around the country, and we love to represent handmade work from all over the United States. We have a lot of local potters and regional potters as well. We love the building. It's just a wonderful location, and we're so glad that it's been preserved.
Yes,
and great
I'm glad they
for
preserved
a shop.
too. I come down here every day, and I said, this is where I live. I live around the corner there, and I'm so glad that Mr. Burke Anderson took time to do this.
It's amazing because they've been preserved because of him. And
Right,
it's a
and I
wonderful
really
thing.
appreciate that. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, there was another small, tiny house. It was a wooden house, and Mr. Roy Brown lived here for many, many years. I remember Mr. Roy Brown would get on his bicycles and go out the gas house pike and have fish. Every day he went out to get fish. This house was also torn down. And next to Mr. Roy's house, it was the biggest house on East Street. And my Uncle Roy, Reverend Roy Boy, used to live here. It was the biggest house, and him and his wife and son lived here. And I remember the days that my Aunt Maggie would sell food outside and would sell food for the church. And then later years on, Naomi, Mr. Roger Neller, and his wife and children moved down here in this house. And this is her last house. She was up here across the street, and then the family came down here to live in the red house and the big house. Yes, we're here at this ice cream place. And I remember this place as being a store of Mr. Bernard Stewart. Mrs. Stewart owned it, worked the store for many, many years. And a lot of times we would come here to get our bread and milk, and they were very nice people. And later on, they moved up the street on the corner of East Street, and they were just as nice as people as you wanted to have. A lot of times we would get bread and milk, and we could pay maybe at the end of the month or the end of the week. Later on, I found out, and I didn't remember this, but I found in the newspaper that they used to sell beer and wine. As a kid, I never seen that. So This is one of the stores that we enjoy coming. And now it is my favorite, fudge and ice cream. And then across the street was another store, was called the Crummett store. We would sometimes go there. And then around the corner it was Hampton Meat Market. We would go, it was 3 stores all around in the vicinity there, and we would go sometime to Hampton Meat Market, the Crummett store, and Bernard Stewart store. We came here the most. You see the train in the middle of the street here? I was told from Miss Judy Brown that a lot of times the train would stop and she would get on that train and go to New York. The train would stop and she would get on there freely to go all the way to New York.
The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, better known as the B&O, first entered Frederick in 1831, with the first train arriving from Baltimore on December 1st of that year, with regular service beginning 2 days later. Maryland was the first state to appropriate funds toward building a railroad. Hence, it received its charter to build the depot in 1828. Once called the oldest freight station in the world, it was built in 1831 on East Street in Frederick, torn down in 1911 and replaced with a more modern wooden freight station, which was mostly destroyed by fire in 1974. Based on a newspaper article dated October 7th, 1892, there was an interesting event that occurred at the Pennsylvania Railroad, the shifting of cars Wednesday night on East Street. One car, not being controlled by the brakes, ran off the end of the switch track near Patrick Street and broke up the sidewalk for a rod or two. No other damage was done, and yesterday morning the car was again placed on the track and taken away. This is just an example of some of the things that happened then that also happen today. So although the technology has changed, things remain the same.
We're here at Eveready Square, and I used to live across the street there. I was told that many blacks were not allowed to work here. I know that I came here in 1970 to work, and the manager then was 2 black foremen named Johnny Collins and Jim Bowie. At the time we were making pots and pans. I didn't stay very long. My husband and I both worked here. Yes, we're still here at Eveready, and I just wanted to mention to you, at the end of the corner there was a laundry. And a lot of people, the residents, work down at this laundromat down here on the corner. And when I was a little girl, I went to Lincoln High School, and you see the railroad tracks? Well, we used to go on the bridge to go to school that way. It was a whole lot quicker, and it was dangerous, but we were on the tracks to go to Lincoln School. I hated those tracks. I was scared to death.
Seemed like forever. Life so confusion has been so long.
All right.
Your ship has lost anchor, and your mind got you drifting. Amen. Your night's almost over. You can ride out your storm. Ride out your storm. God is there with you. You may not feel him. You're not alone. Oh, you're working now, but your morning is coming. Just hold on. though the waters are rising, will do you no harm. Don't give up the battle, for your answer